Jayceon Taylor, better known as The Game, was hailed as Compton's next great rap legend. He came up in the shadow of Dr. Dre, carried the West Coast on his back during the mid-2000s, and dropped one of the most celebrated debut albums in hip-hop history, The Documentary. For a moment, The Game wasn't just another rapper, he was the saviour of the West. He brought storytelling, raw energy, and that unmistakable Compton grit. But as the years passed, cracks began to form. And today, many argue that The Game's career has become less about music and more about capping his way through controversy. The Game built his brand on authenticity. He told the world he lived through gang wars, street struggles, and hustling just to survive. It was the perfect narrative for a Compton rapper. But when fans and rivals started digging deeper, questions began to rise. Was The Game really as deep in the streets as he claimed? Or was it, as many believe, a carefully constructed image? That image helped launch him into the spotlight, but it also became the foundation of his problems. Because the truth is, every time The Game dropped music, drama seemed to follow. His feuds were legendary. From 50 Cent to Jay-Z to Meek Mill, The Game always had someone in his crosshairs. At first, it worked. Beef sold records, diss tracks made headlines. But eventually, people started to wonder, was he making music or just making enemies? Then came the wild stories. The Game has a reputation for being one of the biggest storytellers in rap, and not in the lyrical sense. Over the years, he's been accused of exaggerating, bending facts, and outright lying to keep his name in the conversation. He claimed he once knocked out Suge Knight. He claimed to have been with countless celebrities. He bragged about industry deals, major movie roles, even fights with other rappers that nobody could confirm. To his critics, The Game became less of a rapper and more of a mythmaker, the king of cap. But behind the flexing and the stories was another problem: money. The Game has faced multiple lawsuits, including a $7 million judgment from a sexual assault case that nearly ruined him financially. He's been accused of dodging payments, hiding assets, and even losing ownership of his own music to avoid creditors. For someone who always rapped about hustling and wealth, his legal and financial battles painted a different picture. The music itself also began to slip. While The Documentary and Doctor's Advocates cemented his place in hip-hop history, later projects failed to capture the same magic. Critics accused him of recycling old formulas, relying too heavily on name-dropping other artists, and failing to evolve with the times. His projects still drew attention, but the hype didn't match the glory days. Instead of leading the West Coast, he seemed to be chasing relevance. And then came the endless name-dropping. If you've ever listened to The Game, you know. No rapper mentions other celebrities in their songs as much as he does. At first, it felt like homage, but over time, it started to feel desperate, like he was clinging to connections and name association to keep his music buzzing. Fans joked that his bars sounded more like shout-outs than lyrics.
Social media only amplified the backlash. The Game often posts wild claims on Instagram, showing off alleged wins, telling outrageous stories, and sparking unnecessary beefs. Sometimes it feels like he spends more time trying to convince people of his greatness online than proving it through his art. And in today's internet culture, that's a dangerous game. The more you exaggerate, the quicker fans call you out. But here's the irony. For all the accusations of capping, The Game still remains one of the most talented rappers of his era. When he's focused, his storytelling, delivery, and ability to capture the essence of West Coast hip-hop is unmatched. Even his critics admit when The Game is locked in, he's a beast on the mic. The tragedy is that those flashes of greatness are often overshadowed by the noise, the beef, and the stories that don't add up. So what's really going on? On one hand, you have a rapper who clawed his way out of Compton, broke into the industry under Dr. Dre's wing, and gave the culture one of the best rap debuts ever. On the other, you have a man whose reputation for exaggeration, legal problems, and controversy has made fans question everything he says. And maybe that's the point. In an era where clout is currency, The Game figured out how to keep people talking, even if it meant bending the truth. Love him or hate him, you're still paying attention. And in hip hop, sometimes attention is more valuable than respect. But here's the cliffhanger. How long can that last? At some point, stories get old, lawsuits catch up, and fans move on. The game once called himself the face of Compton, but today newer artists are carrying the torch while he fights to keep his name relevant. The question isn't whether he was ever great, that's undeniable. The real question is whether his legacy will be remembered for his music or for the cap that came with it. Because if history has shown us anything, it's this. Legends are remembered for their truth. And when the truth starts to blur, the legacy starts to collapse. The game's story is a warning. In hip-hop, you can only cap for so long before the world calls you out. And for the game, that moment may already be here.